Um, so the establishment of the SASU, South African Student Sports Union, started like 4 years before it was constitutionally established.
As the university sports started to grow, because you remember at that stage, university sport was not a unified animal. It was made up of 5 different university or college sports associations, and of which the South African University Sports Council was one. Then in 1990, there was a meeting called by Mr. John Baxter from the University of Witwatersrand to look at the possibility of getting all these splinter groups together, because especially at WITS and at UCT and Rhodes University and University of KwaZulu-Natal, they had a lot of problems with all these groups, and the principals or the rectors at the universities wanted to get sport unified at university level. So they then approached the chief director of the Committee of University Principals, Professor Jos Grobelaar, who was my boss at that stage, and asked him if the Committee of University Principals would be willing to drive the process. So my boss called me in and said, there's a meeting at Wits University, that was at the end of February 1990, to discuss unifying university sport in the country. I remember going there. It was my first engagement, or getting to know, the other side, if I can put it that way, of student life. And I can remember when we went to the meeting venue, the Satisco students at that stage, Satisco and Satisa students, they were coming toying, to this meeting in a crowd, and they were singing and shouting, and they had all their caps, hats on, and I know Andrew Dipela was one of the leaders in the group, and Mr. Songezo Nayo and Mangaliso Matlaba became the first president of USSA. So they were in the front, toying there.
Our first problematic meeting, that was in 1994 at the NPE, where SASU was launched. It was fireworks. I think then there was Dr. Mangaliso. He was still a student at Rose then. I think he was the chairperson. Look, we were new in the field, and then we didn't catch those dynamics. But but it was fireworks. We could see, because we were merging from different sporting backgrounds. Others were coming from Satisco, others were coming from historical white institutions, And we had students who were very vibrant. Black students were very vibrant then, And so that's when I knew about SASU, 1994, at the Port Elizabeth University of Port Elizabeth.
So I think the first meeting that I attended, probably not the first, but the most disruptive meeting in the Unity Chats talk that I've attended was at Urban Technikon University in 1993. That we thought Unity was not coming. When that meeting was ended, unceremoniously. We thought we went there for elections, and it was stopped.
The first conference was held at the University of Cape Town, if I'm not mistaken, and if my memory serves me well, we then had the first conference on unity in university sport. That meeting was then at that stage chaired by Mr. John Donald, who hosted the meeting at the University of Cape Town. He was the director of sport.
You know, one thing that impressed me so much about that meeting, I was in awe. The then director head of sport, John Donald, I've never ever heard a white man speaking like that about the importance of unification. I was just sitting there. Who is this man? And that meeting, wow, that meeting was a rough meeting where people spoke their minds. It was also a highly contested, emotional meeting.
If you read the history of SASU, the unity talks fell flat. And Professor Jakes Gerwel was appointed by the University Council of Principals to lead the continued negotiations. I think we battled, we got it right. What we differed on in Durban was the presidency. We knew that the president of Student Sport South Africa must be a student. Okay, I don't want to speak about the chairs that were flying, but I know that we had a very big pause.
Many years later, 4 years later, we actually came to an agreement that we will write a constitution for this new organization, which then became the South African Student Sports Association, SASU, South African Student Sports Union, and so in 1993, SASU was basically then formed or established, actually in December 1992. And then in 1994, we then had a final meeting of all the institutions. Everybody was invited to a meeting to constitute SASU at that stage. And then Professor Grobbelaar agreed to chair this meeting. Professor Jakes Gerwel, who was director at the University of the Western Cape, he was the chairperson of the Committee of University Principals, and he also was involved in the whole process. And so we then went to the University of Port Elizabeth, it was called that stage, which now is the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, and we then constituted the South African Student Sports Union at that stage on the 16th of April 1994. So that's how it all began.
So when we had to form SASU the first time, we were supposed to form it in Durban, and even during that time, because we had an interim structure, and even during that time, I was the candidate for the presidency as well of the unified structure, but a few comrades, one of them from TCE here in Soshanguve and so forth, they really, I can't say disrupted, because they had issues that they have not been consulted, and that things are moving too quickly and so forth. So that meeting couldn't finish its agenda. So there was no election and so forth. The interim structure continued. So that was in Durban. But we went back and so forth, and that's the time at which we spoke to other comrades and so forth, and we were able to bring quite a lot of them into the fold. And then we finally got formed and launched in the Eastern Cape in Port Elizabeth. Yeah. So I think it took about a year in between when there was almost like a disruption of that meeting. But when you see disruptions, you know that sometimes maybe there was not enough preparation at that level. We were prepared from the side of Satisu at that time. We were very well prepared.
In 1993, we participated in our first World University Games that was held in Buffalo in America. And Mr. Mvuzu Mbebe, the late Mvuzu Mbebe, he was the chef de mission, or the head of the delegation then, and he led the teams of South Africa to the Games. We won our first medal at the World University Games there. It was Louis Fouchier. He won the javelin throw for men in track and field, and it was also the only medal that we won at that Universiade. At that Universiade or World University Games, we call it the Universiade. At that Universiade, we also tabled our application for membership to the International University Sports Federation, FISU. And myself and Dr. Matlaba were then represented in the meeting. We were so overwhelmed by the fact that all the countries invited us with open arms, and they unanimously agreed to grant us a membership. So we did a lot of homework before that as well. Dr. Matlaba and myself went a few days ahead. We met with the university sports structures of the USA, where the games were hosted. We also met with Jesse Jackson and some of his representatives at that stage, and they were really very enthusiastic to receive us from Africa. And Dr. Matlaba really played a big role in promoting our organization then. Yeah, I must say it never actually sank in. And, I was just so fired up to make this thing work, and because I really believed in what we are trying to achieve, and it makes me even emotional to think about it.